Weekend Report at 5 and 11.
From ABC News, this is the Weekend Report. Now from our Washington headquarters, here's Tom Gerald.
Good evening. Senator Paul Tsongas called it not a lame duck session, but a lame brain session. Such was the frustration tonight as Congress went through a self-inflicted agony which has become a ritual. First, they let the federal government technically run out of money. Then, hoping to capitalize on the pressure to keep things going, they tacked their own favorite amendments onto a new funding bill. The end result borders on legislative anarchy. We have two reports. First, Charles Gibson on Capitol Hill.
The Senate is still tied in knots. Square knots, double knots, tied up tight. In session 50 of the last 61 hours, the Senate still hasn't passed the giant money bill that's necessary to keep the government running. The three-day drudgery of debate had members reading newspapers on the floor. Others spent time cleaning out their desks, getting ready for the Christmas break that probably won't start for days. The money bill was on the verge of passage when it was announced the Senate would next go to the gas tax. Staunch opponent of that tax, John East, took the floor. He shows no signs now of giving it up. Wyoming Simpson asked East if he realized he could be solely responsible for shutting down the government Monday morning with his delaying tactics. East replied some in his home state of North Carolina might find shutting down the government of benefit to the nation. This money bill will get passed sometime, but then it must go to a conference with the House. It dispute congressional pay, a sticky issue. MX, whether any money for production should be approved. And jobs. The House wants $5 billion for jobs, the Senate $1 billion. The president has said he's against any money for jobs. So there are two giant obstacles now to the continuing resolution to the money bill necessary to keep the government going. John East, who has got the floor of the Senate and shows no signs of quitting, and the president, who may well veto the money bill once it is passed. Confused? So is the poor House of Representatives. Members there are simply waiting for the Senate. Members there spent their day waiting and watching football.
It's more important than the continuing resolution.
Charles Gibson, ABC News, Capitol Hill.
This is Ann Compton. President Reagan isn't bluffing. He told a radio interview at midday that he will veto even the $1.2 billion jobs package in the Senate. But the president offered the first real hope of compromise if the jobs money is channeled in a new direction.
If, on the other hand, they come down with some addition to this that is in another area that you look at and say, well, there is a value to this, does the value offset the risk of adding this to the deficit? An orange and an apple went into the conference committee, it might come out a pear.
Aides at the White House suggest acceptable spending includes such areas as military construction projects. The president still wants a 5-cent-a-gallon gasoline tax to create highway jobs. On Social Security, President Reagan said he knows the differences among members of his Blue Ribbon Commission are not great, so he wants them to come up with at least a few recommendations for the troubled system. And on the Middle East, President Reagan denied the U.S. set any February deadline for withdrawal of foreign troops from Lebanon. But again, he demanded quick withdrawal of what he considers Israeli occupation forces. As to President Reagan's own re-election plans, he said it's still too early to say. And after agreeing he's enjoyed office so far, Ronald Reagan admitted there are drawbacks.
You kind of live in like a bird in a gilded cage, and I sometimes look out the window at Pennsylvania Avenue and wonder what it'd be like to be able to just walk down the street to the corner drugstore and look at the magazines. I can't do that anymore.
Ann Compton, ABC News, the White House.
Does Congress work? That question will be explored tomorrow morning on This Week with David Brinkley. Special guests will be Senators Moynihan of New York and Dole of Kansas, and retiring Congressman Henry Royce of Wisconsin. That's at 11:30 Eastern Time on Sunday. Still ahead tonight, a report from Poland on the official lifting of martial law and what it means to the labor union movement. And a look at the holiday season as celebrated in one of the most colorful states, a report on Texas Christmas.
Some things speak for themselves.
It's Donkey Kong, the arcade sensation, and now you can play it at home.
Hang on, sweetheart. I'm gonna save you.
Now you can play Donkey Kong on your ColecoVision, Atari VCS, or Intellivision video game system. Donkey Kong has multiple screens, just like the arcade game.
You're not gonna stop me, you stupid ape.
Play Donkey Kong on your ColecoVision, Atari VCS, or Intellivision video game system.
Don't worry, darling. I'll save you.
As expected, Poland's parliament today formally approved the military regime's plans to suspend martial law. But at the same time, it gave the government sweeping powers to crush dissent, provoking a harsh reaction from the Catholic Church. The story now from David Ensort in Warsaw.
There were no votes against the measures and just 9 abstentions. No surprise, since the Polish parliament exists to approve all government proposals. But if Parliament doesn't vote against the government, its members do speak against the government sometimes. Critics today said the new legislation actually makes life tougher in some ways rather than easier. For example, a worker will have to get his boss's permission to quit a factory job, a measure that the Polish Conference of Bishops called in a statement similar to medieval, feudal times. The bishop's statement was unusually critical. It also pointed to new penalties for spreading social unrest, under which possessing an anti-government leaflet becomes a crime. The bishops called those new penalties psychological terror. Still, the suspension of martial law should make life somewhat easier for most Poles. Public gatherings will be legal. The role of police and military in Polish life will be reduced. The government is expected to use the authority Parliament has given it to suspend martial law at the end of the year. David Ensor, ABC News, Warsaw.
Meeting informally in Vienna today, OPEC oil ministers failed to overcome bitter feuding and agree on production cuts to keep the price of crude oil fixed at $34 a barrel. Formal sessions on new production quotas begin tomorrow. Jordan's King Hussein arrived in Washington tonight for meetings with administration officials on President Reagan's Middle East peace plan. Senior administration officials say the president's initiatives could die unless Jordan quickly enters the peace negotiations with Israel.
Now you can do business 3 hours longer and still save overtime expenses with Expanded 800, an innovation of the Bell Network, the world's most advanced information management system. Your customers call a single toll-free number, and the network automatically switches them to your offices that are still open. You write more orders, give better service, cut expenses, do more business with Expanded 800. It's Bell Knowledge working for you. The knowledge business.
Patricia, Neil, don't you dare show that old picture.
It's dear Isabel, years ago.
Back then, nobody I knew had arthritis. But now it seems like most everybody does.
Well, Anacin has helped people fight pain for over 50 years. Anacin blocks minor arthritis pain right at the source. Helps you move freely again for hours.
You're never too old to learn.
Fight arthritis pain and win with Anacin.
There was excitement in Salt Lake City today as Dr. Barney Clark, who this week appeared to be on the verge of death because of a malfunction of his artificial heart, showed signs of remarkable improvement. Tom Schell reports.
At today's medical briefing, Dr. Chase Peterson could not restrain his enthusiasm as he announced that Dr. Barney Clark is off the critical list and now considered only serious.
You'd ask whether we're pessimistic or optimistic, and we tried diligently not to be either. And so I will now bite my knuckle and continue to be professional. But damn it, this is a good day.
Doctors released pictures of Dr. Barney Clark taken this afternoon and said he sat up in a chair for 38 minutes this morning and was able to look out the window at these snow-covered mountains. Clark was too tired to sit up again as he visited with his wife, but he watched a televised football game.
I would say that he's now demonstrated more physical strength and more physical capacity and activity than any time since surgery and, incidentally, before surgery.
Dr. Peterson said Clark's physical activity is very significant, but very limited.
Considering his status, that's an increase of muscle activity, comparing the change in the high jump record from 4 feet to 5 feet 5.
For a man with an artificial heart, that's a big jump. Tom Schell, ABC News, Salt Lake City.
At the Kennedy Center here in Washington tonight, Soviet defector Natalia Makarova was hurt when she was struck by a piece of falling scaffolding during a performance. Makarova is prima ballerina with the American Ballet Theater. No word yet on the nature or extent of her injuries.
Holiday greetings from Budweiser. The people who bring you Budweiser wish you and yours a happy and safe holiday season.
In today's offices, managers and professionals are expected to earn their salaries with tools that haven't changed much since the 1800s, like the ballpoint pen, the pencil and eraser, and the typewriter. No wonder productivity is behind the times. But Xerox can help with flexible information systems that simplify word and data processing and print and distribute information at record speeds, which can put you a century ahead of where you were yesterday.
Don Coryell after Monday Night Football.
With Christmas rapidly approaching, it's not just the stores and shops that are increasingly active. Today, First Lady Nancy Reagan joined the ranks of some of the busiest people these days, the volunteers who work to make the holiday season much happier for those in need. Mrs. Reagan assisted at the Christmas store here in Washington, where donated Christmas toys are distributed to needy handicapped children. All across the country, the landscape is changing as Christmas approaches. Trees are appearing where there were no trees. Lights are shining brightly where normally there would be darkness. The message of Christmas is colorfully presented in Texas, as Dennis Trout reports.
As Christmas Eve approaches and Santa looks for earthly guideposts, he shouldn't have any trouble at all locating North Texas. It's lit with enough splendor to warm the hearts of thousands of children and more than a few power company executives. If the term energy crunch ever had much meaning here, it certainly does not seem to at the moment. This year's top drawing card in the Dallas area is the Interlochen subdivision, where neighborhood competition brings on new displays as surely as big bills follow Christmas buying. Loyalty to the Lone Star State cannot do a competitor any harm. Looking at all this is close to replacing Sunday football as the region's leading spectator sport. And even Santa's willing to abandon the sleigh for more practical Texas transportation.
Have a Merry Christmas!
Christmas spirit plays with equal gusto in older neighborhoods such as affluent Highland Park, where the town pays for the lighting of huge old trees, and townspeople actually gather to share caroling and goodwill. As for decorating, cost seems less important than the mood created. And there's constant proof that Texans will decorate anything. The reward, they say, is pleasing others.
If you can do anything that people enjoy or something like that, and if you enjoy life yourself, I mean, you're going to do it.
Just a few Texans, such as these two, seem a little reluctant about living part of the year in a house decorated with colored lights, a shyness their human counterparts don't really understand. Dennis Trout, ABC News, Texas.
And that's our report for tonight. I'm Tom Jarrell. For all of us here at ABC News, good night.
From Washington, this has been the Weekend Report. Tomorrow, watch World News Tonight Sunday. At the dinner hour, join ABC's Sam Donaldson for a complete, up-to-date look at the day's top news stories. The Weekend Report is a presentation of ABC News.
Lighthearted entertainment begins at 6:30 when Barney Miller's men confront the unbelievable with compassion and humor. Entertainment tonight at 7 adds the latest news plus features about your favorite stars. And at 7:30, Jack Smith shares stories as incredible as he is easygoing. Entertainment that's gentle on your mind, weeknights on 10. This is KGTV San Diego, Channel 10, owned and operated by McGraw-Hill Broadcasting Company, Incorporated. We now conclude our broadcast day, and thank you for being with us.